Have you ever felt like your brain just isn't the sponge it used to be? That feeling that learning new things gets, well, harder every single year? It's a super common feeling, but what if I told you there's a way to fight back? Today, we're going to unpack 6 science-backed secrets to basically hack your brain and learn faster at any age. So let's dive right in.
I'm angry. And I'm angry because I wish I knew this when I was younger. Now, those aren't my words. They're from neuroscientist Leela Landowski. And if that quote hits you right in the gut, well, you're in exactly the right place. That feeling of frustration, it's the perfect launchpad for understanding how we can all become better learners.
So, before we can get to the hacks, we first have to understand the problem. We need to look at the actual science of what's going on inside your brain and figure out why it feels like learning gets tougher as we get older.
And it really all boils down to this one incredible concept: neuroplasticity. This is your brain's amazing, almost magical ability to physically change and rewire itself based on what you do and experience. I mean, every time you learn a new skill, or even just a new fact, you are literally building new connections between your brain cells. It's the physical foundation for all learning. Here's a great way to picture it. The very first time you try something new, it's like you're hacking a little dirt path through a dense forest in your brain. Kind of slow, kind of clumsy, but every single time you practice, you're paving that path, smoothing it out, widening it, until it becomes a super fast, multi-lane highway. That's neuroplasticity in action.
So if our brains are always changing, why does it get harder? That's the big question, right? Well, the thing is, our natural, raw ability to learn, our peak neuroplasticity, happens when we're kids. They really are just like sponges. But after our mid-20s, that ability starts a pretty steep decline. It just gets a lot harder to build those new highways from scratch. But, and this is a huge but, here is the good news. That decline is not a life sentence, not even close. You can consciously take the wheel. There are 6 specific ingredients that you can use to supercharge your brain and make learning way more effective, no matter how old you are. All right, so our first couple of ingredients are all about getting your brain into the right state before you even start. Think of it like warming up for a workout. We're going to prime your brain with 2 essentials: attention and alertness.
Neural hack number 1, attention. Your brain at its core is a single tasker. It is designed to focus deeply on one thing at a time. So all that multitasking we think we're doing, it's a myth. Every time you scroll social media, jumping from a friend's post to an ad to a news story, you're doing what's called context switching. And studies show it literally creates attention deficits. You're basically training your brain to be distracted.
So how do you fight back? How do you get that focus back? It's actually incredibly simple. Just 20 minutes of moderate exercise can seriously boost your attention for about 2 hours. It's an amazing hack. The takeaway? Before you sit down to learn something important, go for a quick walk, a little jog. It really, really works.
Okay, next up is alertness. And this one might sound a little weird, but stick with me. Short bursts of stress are actually fantastic for learning. I'm talking about things like a quick blast of cold water at the end of your shower, or a really fast-paced bit of exercise. What that does is release adrenaline. And adrenaline doesn't just wake you up, it dials up your alertness and actively helps your brain form new memories. Now, chronic, long-term stress is terrible for you, but these little shots of stress, they're like a learning superpower. And this leads to a really cool trick: working with your brain's natural clock, not against it. You see, your brain operates on these things called ultradian rhythms. It basically cycles through peaks of high focus and alertness about every 90 minutes. You just can't be on all day. So the key is to plan your most intense, focused learning for those 90-minute windows. Okay, so you've primed your brain, you're focused, you're alert, you're ready to go. But how do you make sure all that new information you're taking in actually, well, sticks? That's where our next 3 ingredients come in: sleep, repetition, and breaks. Let's start with a big one. This is absolutely 100% non-negotiable: sleep. It isn't passive. It's not just about resting. It's an incredibly active and critical process for learning. When you sleep, your brain is hard at work, moving the day's information from a short-term holding area into your long-term storage. So that all-nighter you pull to cram for a test, you're literally preventing yourself from forming long-term memories. The bottom line is simple: no sleep, no long-term learning, period.
You've heard practice makes perfect your whole life, right? Well, here's the neuroscience behind why. Building those new neural highways takes a ton of energy. Your brain is not going to invest all that energy for something you only see once. So, repetition is like putting a big flashing neon sign on a piece of information. It's you telling your brain, hey, this right here is important. You should definitely build a highway at this spot.
And this is really where we see the difference between the old way of doing things and these new neurohacks. So out with the cramming all-nighters and in with prioritizing sleep. Instead of studying for hours and hours straight, you take strategic breaks. And instead of just seeing something once and hoping it sticks, you use spaced repetition. It's a total game changer. And speaking of breaks, this might be one of the most underrated learning tools out there. Right after you finish learning something, your brain needs some downtime to process it. In fact, it will subconsciously replay that new information at up to 20 times the normal speed. It's wild. Taking just a 10 to 20-minute break, and yes, that means no phone, is absolutely essential to let that consolidation process happen.
So, we've covered 5 powerful keys to learning faster. But this one might be the most important and for sure the most uncomfortable. Let's talk about the incredible power of making mistakes. It's your brain's secret weapon.
Let me ask you a question. Be honest. Are you afraid of making mistakes? That feeling, that little bit of anxiety or that knot in your stomach when you realize you got something wrong? Turns out, that's not just in your head. It's a real biological signal that has a very, very specific purpose. Here's what's actually going on inside your brain. When you make a mistake, your brain releases these little stress chemicals. We feel it as anxiety. But those signals act like a flare, lighting up your brain's attention networks and opening up a perfect little window for neuroplasticity. That anxious feeling is literally your brain shouting, "Pay attention, something important just happened. It's time to change and get better." It's basically a built-in learning accelerator. So, let's bring it all home. The 6 keys to unlocking your brain's true potential and learning faster at any age. It's all about working with your brain's biology, not fighting it. It's about focusing your attention, boosting your alertness, prioritizing your sleep, using spaced repetition, taking those strategic breaks, and maybe most importantly, learning to embrace your mistakes as the incredible learning opportunities they are.
So I want to leave you with this powerful thought. The anxiety of a mistake is your brain asking you to become better. Listen to it. The next time you feel that little sting of getting something wrong, don't shy away from it. Lean into it. Because that feeling, it isn't the feeling of failure. It's the sound of your brain getting ready to learn.